Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Guild Arches video, where today I'm going to be using the prehistoric pairing of Kabutops and Omastar. Now, I think that these two are going to do extremely well because both of them individually found themselves at the bottom of the A tier, but together I think that this pairing can be incredibly strong. Now, just like the Armaldo and Cradily video, I'm going to be starting out as a fully evolved Kabutops and Omastar, so already they're going to have a massive advantage over the individual runs. But with that, let's go ahead and go over their stats and move pool. For base stats, Kabutops has 60 HP, 115 attack, 105 defense, 65 special attack, 70 special defense, and 80 speed, and gets access to a wide variety of moves including normal, grass, ground, steel, ice, water, and even fighting as well, which is some great type coverage. And in the other corner, we have Omastar, who has 70 HP, 60 attack, 125 defense, 115 special attack, 70 special defense, and 55 speed, and gets access to mostly normal water and ice type moves, as well as a few dark and rock type moves as well. So Kabutops is very much the physical attacker and a bit stronger as well, whereas Omastar is very much a special attacker, but it does give up some of its speed for a bit more HP and defense, which should come in handy, but unfortunately it will be quite slow throughout the game. As well as both these Pokemon have a 4x weakness to grass, which isn't the worst type to be quadruple weak to, but there is a large portion of the game that has grass types in it. But on the flip side, they are also the rock type, which I think is the best offensive type in the game, and getting stab on ancient power would be incredible. Unfortunately, Kabutops doesn't get it until level 65, which I don't think we're going to get that far, but if we do, it's going to be incredible. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the Pokemon themselves, and we start off with Kabutops, who has a brave nature, raising its attack but lowering its speed. Honestly, kinda alright, and having the extra attack will definitely be very helpful throughout the game, so I think it's a pretty decent nature for it. But because of its nature, I decided to give it the Swift Swim ability, which doubles its speed in the rain, making it so that the speed loss doesn't really matter too much. It could have also had Battle Armor, which prevents crits, which would have been really nice to have, but I decided against it, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Scratch, Hardened, and Absorbed by level 10. Now moving on to Omastar, it has a modest nature, raising its special attack but lowering its attack. Honestly, a perfect nature for it. Now, because it also has such a low speed stat, I decided Swift Swim is better for it as well, instead of Shell Armor, and it has Constrict, Withdraw, and Bite by level 10. So with that, we move on into the game, and we're going to start with the Old Man as usual. Now, because these are two fully evolved Pokemon, I decided to not even be fully healed coming into this fight, because I doubt the Old Man could really do anything to me. But I am sorely mistaken. Now, I do take down the Horsey and Abra pretty quickly, but had that Shroomish decide to go for Absorb, there's a good chance I could have lost a Pokemon here, and maybe been put in a bad position, but we get through it just fine. We move on to the Power Rangers. I decide to fight Brown, and that's because Baltoy is weak to Bite, and Kabutops can still do decent damage with the Scratch. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to just a little bit of rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Now, in the last video, I talked a bit about trying to build up a backlog of videos, and at the moment, I have about 3.5 done, even though I'm not quite ready for 2 videos a week again. I will be getting to that soon, but anyway, with Brown defeated, I go ahead and move on to the Tutor Lady, and I teach Seismic Toss to Kabutops, because at the moment, it's really struggling to deal any real damage with Scratch. At level 19, Omastar gets Water Gun. And then I go into the battle against Laverna. She leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly. I go for Bite and Scratch into Beautifly to try to get rid of it immediately because it has Absorb. And a crit Bite finishes it off. Then out comes Roselia. Hopefully I'm able to take this down in a single turn. Go for Scratch, dealing almost half. And Bite unfortunately doesn't get the flinch. And Mega Drain takes down Kabutops from well over half health. Okay, well that's not great. Another Bite isn't enough. And Omastar goes down as well. Now I go back into the battle again, now at level 20, and the thing is this is kind of the perfect level because Beautifly doesn't quite get taken down by both of us attacking it. which means that I could have attacked the Roselia and probably taken it down the next turn without any real issue. And instead, I'm now on attempt number 6 because I was just trying to rely on Roselia getting flinched by Bite before eventually just leveling up high enough that I could take it down with a single volley from both. So a bit of hindsight really hurts here, but to be fair, it was a 30% chance that Roselia flinched, it just never did. Anyway, now that we're down to her last Pokemon, Delcatty, and unfortunately Kabutops is infatuated, there was a chance that that could have taken more turns, but luckily Kabutops got through it, and Love Disc eventually goes down. With Lovrina defeated, we now move on to the obligatory Mirabee. Well, how are you doing today, Mirabee? Well, it's always a pleasure to see you. Anyway, at level 25, both Kabutops and Omastar get Mudshot, and then I race on to the Real Gam Tower to go pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and while I'm here, I also pick up the TM for Blizzard. Now, Omastar has Hidden Power Ice at 56 base power, and Kabutops has Hidden Power Flying at 39. Not too bad, but I go ahead and teach Kabutops Body Slam over Scratch anyway, and then I pick up the Swinub here to raise Ice-type damage, and then I teach Omastar Ice Beam over Hidden Power and move on to the battle against Snattle. He leads with a Lantern and a Quagsire, and I go for Body Slam and Ice Beam into the Quagsire, which takes it down in a single hit. And after deciding not to learn Leer, out comes the Shadow Lunatone. Now this thing is always a bit of a threat because it likes to set up Shadow Sky and then hits with pretty decently strong Shadow Waves, so I do want to take it down as quick as possible. I go for Seismic Toss, doing a good chunk of damage, but Ice Beam finishes it off with a crit. Then out comes Cast Form, Shockwave's doing quite a bit of damage from the Lantern, and even though the Cast Form also has Shockwave, it's not an electric type, so it doesn't get the stab bonus on it. So I decide to take down Lantern this turn, and decide not to learn Sand Attack. Out comes his final Pokemon, which is Metang, and Cast Form goes for Icy Wind, lowering our speed. Fruity Pebbles rain down, and unfortunately I am just slower than the Cast Form now. I go for Mudshot, doing quite a bit of damage to Metang. I survive a Thunder Punch, a second Mudshot finishes it off. Fruity Pebbles rain down, leaving Kabutops at 3 HP. Now one of these Pokemon is going to go down. It turns out to be Kabutops. Ice Beam hits, taking it down to just a sliver, but the Fruity Pebbles finish it off. So we're able to get past Snattle first try. At level 37, Omastar learns Protect, so I give her the Water Gun, and we go into the battle against Gonzap, who leads with a Nuzleaf and an Electrode. Now unfortunately, as you can see, I'm already in a pretty sorry state, so let's go ahead and give that a second attempt. Omastar goes for Protect to block either Fake Out or Spark. Unfortunately, Kabutops goes down to a single crit Spark. Okay, well that's awful. And Omastar gets paralyzed immediately. Okay, well Omastar goes down, and that was a quick second attempt. Now on the fourth attempt, and the strategy is exactly the same, Nuzleaf decides to Fake Out Kabutops though, but luckily Electrode hits Spark into the protected Omastar. On the second turn it goes for Spark, which doesn't paralyze Omastar this time, so I'm able to take it down with Mudshot, and then out comes Vileplume, who eats the Ice Beam from Omastar, which then brings out Whiscash, and Whiscash also has Spark, so I want to take it down as quick as possible as well, which it goes down to a Body Slam and Ice Beam, and then out comes his final Pokemon, Skarmory, and I go for Seismic Toss and Ice Beam into it, which should take it down. It does, and then all that's left is the Nuzleaf, which absolutely cannot survive an Ice Beam, or a Body Slam for that matter. So goodbye Gonzap and hello Gorgon. He leads with a Celio and a Lairon. I go for Bite and Body Slam on the first turn to take down Celio, and then start dealing damage to Slowking, which Bite takes it down to yellow. Now I decide to protect with Omastar just in case the Lairon goes for Earthquake or the Slowking decides to attack into it. Unfortunately it doesn't and instead hits Kabutops, but not before I was able to take down Lairon, bringing out the Ursaring. Now I go for Body Slam to take down the Slowking, which then brings out the Shadow Primeape. Now this thing is always a bit of a threat, but hopefully Ice Beam takes it down. It doesn't, survives on a sliver. Okay, well, I go for Body Slam to start dealing damage to Ursaring, and go for Bite to finish off Primeape, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Hypno. Now this thing is also quite a threat because it has Shadow Storm, which could do a ton of damage. Go for Bite, and it flinches, and I'm able to take it down with ease. So that's Gorgon first attempt. Now I move on to the final area of the game, but not before I picked up the Rain Dance TM. And I do think that these two are doing very well despite the few hiccups they've had, so let's keep it rolling with Laverna. She leads with a Gorbis and a Gardevoir, and because both of my Pokemon are male, I want to take down Gorbis as soon as possible, that way it doesn't use Attract. It goes down to Body Slam and Bite. Omastar gets paralyzed from the first Thunder Punch from Gardevoir, and Body Slam isn't enough to finish it off. Roselia hits a Leech Seed before I can take it down with Ice Beam. And then out comes Farfetch'd. Now this thing is always annoying because it likes to set up Shadow Panic, so I do want to take it down as quick as possible, but I decide to go for Protect, just so I don't get hit by Shadow Panic. Unfortunately, Kabutops does. Omastar goes down to 7 HP. I go for Body Slam, which doesn't quite finish off Farfetch'd, unfortunately. So it does survive and uses another Shadow Panic to confuse Omastar. I get paralyzed and go down to Leech Seed. And Kabutops hits itself in confusion. Shadow Sky goes up, so now Kabutops can't heal anymore. And unfortunately, I just get whittled down. Now, the problem with that fight is that I got left with Kabutops with no way of actually damaging the birds. So I decide to teach Blizzard over Hidden Power. And unfortunately, Blizzard does come with one huge drawback, and it's not the accuracy, it's me. Blizzard just makes me incredibly unwise because I'll see opportunities that really don't make any sense to try to go for, that could save a single turn, when in reality there's a good chance that it also just misses both Pokemon and I do nothing for a turn. But I go for it here, which doesn't take down either, but freezes both. Okay, well that's incredibly lucky. But unfortunately Farfetch'd gets out immediately, misses a Confusion, and goes down to Body Slam. But yeah, in the future, I need to be very careful about actually using Blizzard. But moving on to Snaddle, he leads with a Metang and a Quagsire, and I was really hoping to take down both of his leads with Ice Beam and Mudshot, but unfortunately the Metang survived, and Scizor came out. I go for Mudshot into Scizor, not dealing that much damage, but Ice Beam finishes off Metang, bringing out Solrock. Now Solrock always sets up Shadow Sky on the first turn, so it's not really that threatening right away. I go for Seismic Toss, dealing a decent amount to Solrock, but Bite finishes off. Out comes Cast Form. Thanks to our high defense, Steel Wing really doesn't do that much damage. And I decide to go for Seismic Toss to see if it'd do any better than Mudshot. It does. And Cast Form goes down to Ice Beam. Then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Starmie. And I need to take this thing down immediately because it outspeeds both of us. I'm able to take it down to half, and Bite finishes it off, and then all that's left is the Scizor, who gets one last Silver Wind off before going down to Seismic Toss. So right before the next fight, I decide to teach Rain Dance, and this is because both of his leads are very fast, and on top of that, it can really mess up Swallow when it really wants to set up Shadow Sky. So I go ahead and go into the battle, and I go for Rain Dance and Body Slam, taking down Alakazam and getting rid of the Fruity Pebbles that are about to fall. Now that my speed is doubled, I should have no problem outspeeding the Swallow. So I go for Body Slam into Kingdra, taking it down to half, and Kingdra goes down. Out comes Heracross. Swallow goes for Shadow Sky once again. Unfortunately, that means that I am slower once again though. And on top of that, now that it has Shadow Sky set up, there's a good chance it's going to go for a Shadow Half, so I decide to protect with Omastar. While it has the HP of everyone else, I go for Blizzard, taking down the Swallow and dealing a little bit of damage to Heracross. Out comes Electabuzz, and it absolutely outspeeds us right now, so I would like to set up Rain Dance, but it also is kind of risky, so I decide not to. It just uses Shadow Half instead, meaning that I can take it down safely. At bringing out the Snorlax, I go for Ice Beam, which was going for Electabuzz, but isn't anymore. And unfortunately, I'm down to very low health on Kabutops. I can go for Blizzard, which does take down Heracross, dealing a little bit of damage to Snorlax. A lucky miss. Okay, well, I go for Body Slam, dealing a good chunk of damage, but not before I get taken down by Shadow End. Okay, well, I go into the battle once again. This time, I'm just going to take down the Swallow right away because I really don't want to have to deal with the Shadow Halves. So I take it down, and then out comes the Kingdra and the Heracross once again, both getting pelted by Fruity Pebbles. Now that I can get Rain up without having to worry about Swallow taking it down, I decide to set it up, do a little bit of damage to Kingdra, but now I will outspeed everything else on his team, even with a little speed drop. Go for Protect and Body Slam, taking down Kingdra, bringing out the Electabuzz once again. And with the knowledge from the last attempt, there's a good chance it's going to go for Shadow Half once again as well, so I decide to take it down quickly. But unfortunately, it survives on just a sliver from Mud Shot, but luckily it just goes for Shadow Storm instead. Now, with Electabuzz so low, and Heracross being fairly low as well, I go for Blizzard, which doesn't quite finish off Heracross, and completely misses Electabuzz, allowing Electabuzz to use Shadow Half, and have the HP we have left. Now, at the same time, this is pretty decent because it also has Snorlax's HP, so Body Slam and Ice Beam should be able to finish it off, and with Electabuzz charging, I can easily take it down. Never mind, the Rain is gone. Okay, it just went for Shadow Half. If it had gone for Shadow Storm, there's a good chance I could have lost. Anyway, moving on to Gorgon, he leads with an Ursaring and a Slowking. I go for Body Slam and Bite into the Slowking because Ursaring always protects on the first turn. But before we can get to the next Pokemon, Omastar levels up to 55 and gets Ancient Power, which I decide to teach over Bite. Gorgon sends out Aggron, which, because I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do, I decide to attack both. Aggron goes for Protect, so I'm able to Ice Beam the Ursaring, leaving it on just a sliver once again. Ursaring protects now, go for Mud Shot, taking Aggron down very low. Ice Beam finishes it off. And now that Kabutops is level 55, it gets Mega Drain, which I guess I can use. It's probably better than Seismic Toss at this point. Out comes Walrein. I go for Mega Drain and Ancient Power, but this definitely doesn't make any sense because I could definitely do way more damage with Body Slam. I just wanted to use the new shiny move. Anyway, Ursaring finishes off its own partner with Earthquake, and so Shadow Poliwrath comes out. And this is right after I took a couple days break, so like the rust is really showing here. I go for Body Slam eventually, taking Poliwrath down to half and finish off the Ursaring. Then out comes Mr. Mime, his second Shadow Pokemon, and Poliwrath gets off the Shadow Sky. I go for Body Slam into the Mr. Mime, who survives despite having a very low physical defense stat and very low health. But Mr. Mime goes down, and so does my Omastar to the Fruity Pebbles, leaving Kabutops at 12 HP, which luckily it can take down Poliwrath with Body Slam. Okay, well, we move on to Eldis, who leads with a Ninjask and a Manectric, and I decide to go for Mud Shot and Rain Dance. Hopefully I can take down my Manectric in a single hit. I do, and then out comes Salamence. Now with Rain Dance up, I should be able to outspeed it with ease, and with Ice Beam, it should do enough to take it down. Now Kabutops can't really do anything here anyway, so I decide to just use Call. That way it doesn't play a whole animation and waste a little bit of time. I go for another Ice Beam, and I decide to go for Blizzard this time, which actually does take Flygon down, bringing out Marowak, and this should go down to just a single Ice Beam, which it does, and that brings out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lapras. Now Lapras is always going to set up Shadow Sky on the first turn, so unless I can take it down, which I definitely cannot, it will get rid of my Rain boost, which shouldn't matter anymore because Ninjask is already incredibly fast, so we couldn't catch up to it anyway, and Lapras is fairly slow. So Body Slam and Ancient Power finish it off, and then all that's left is that Ninjask. Once it pops out of the ground, I play Whack-A-Mole and take it down. Okay, with that, Eldis is defeated, and we move on to the big box legendary Shadowlugia. Now, I do think that I should be able to take it down fairly easily. Unfortunately, it does outspeed, hits me with Shadow down. I go for Body Slam, doing a decent amount of damage. Ice Beam takes it down to red. I decide to protect with Omastar, and it decides to attack Omastar, and I take it down without any damage. Moving on to the final battle against Greevil, he leads with a Rhydon and a Moltres. Shadow Fire, because it's faster than me, go for Mega Drain, which isn't enough to take down Rhydon in a single hit, which is unfortunate. but Ancient Power is enough to take down Moltres. Then out comes Shadow Executor. Rhydon hits a critical hit, Shadow End taking Kabutops down in a single hit. I go for Ice Beam, taking down the Executor. Rhydon misses. Tauros sets up Shadow Sky, go for Ice Beam, taking it down with a crit, which brings out the second of the legendary birds, Articuno. Another miss from the Rhydon. I go for Ancient Power into it, dealing a little over half. But Omastar eventually goes down, and we go in for the second attempt. With my newfound knowledge, I go for Blizzard, which doesn't take down Rhydon, but does do a decent amount of damage. I set up the Rain to move faster, and now that Rhydon is at half health, Mega Drain does finish it off, so I'm able to heal a bit of health from it as well. And then I go for Ancient Power, which I know takes down the Moltres, bringing out the Tauros. Now, it is going to hit Intimidate, which is unfortunate for Kabutops. I go for Blizzard, which misses the Executor unfortunately, but does allow me to Ice Beam the Tauros. Then out comes the Articuno, Executor goes for Shadow Hold. Now, I don't think there's any way for us to take down Articuno on the first turn without a crit, and that Body Slam definitely proves that. Shadow Chill hits, taking Kabutops down to half. I go for another Body Slam to finish it off, bringing out the Zapdos. Ice Beam hits, getting a crit, taking it down in a single hit, and then all that's left is the Executor, who definitely can't survive another Ice Beam. And with that, we beat Grivel on the second attempt, which is pretty good. So how well did these two do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 8 hours, 4 minutes, and 46 seconds. At level 57 for Omastar and 57 for Kabutops, and they lost 13 times throughout the game, with only 2 of those being to random trainers, which is kind of surprising considering just how many grass types there are in the game. But apparently they're just that good that they don't really worry about it, except for in the very early game. So with that, where do they find themselves on the tier list? Well, they find themselves near the top of S, actually. They are very similar to Swampert in a lot of ways, but I think that these two just get through the game a little easier, despite the fact that they're already fully evolved Pokemon. Now, usually in a pairing, there's always a Pokemon that kind of lets the other one down, and in this case, it's unfortunately Kabutops, surprisingly, and it's just that Kabutops really misses ranges on one-hit KOs quite a lot. Despite having a plus attack nature, it just feels like it just doesn't pick up KOs, and I think that's because it doesn't have a solid damaging move other than Body Slam, which is very unfortunate for it. Had it gotten to level 65 with Ancient Power, I'm sure it could have been great, but it just wasn't necessary. And Omastar, while being very good throughout the entire run, always had the fatal flaw of just being extremely slow, and unfortunately I didn't really have a way to fix that until the final area of the game, when I'm able to finally get Rain Dance. But despite the few problems that these Pokemon have, they do make an incredible pairing. So with that, they find themselves near the top of S tier, and if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!